Welcome to Collaborate, where it's almost all AI all the time, but not really.
We're making up for last conference where we didn't really talk about AI at all, and that was a bit weird for a security.
A little bit. We talked about it a little bit.
One session.
One session.
Yeah.
One session where we said we're going to do AI stuff, and here we are. So I actually just want to thank that previous panel again because I'm so excited. I have been in that seat that our colleague from Google Cloud referred to of working with insurance underwriters. In fact, we did a podcast episode on that very topic a while back, just talking about the challenges in that space. And it's a space that could be better, and I'm so glad we're working with leaders like McGill and Triumph, and to see the leadership Google's doing there. So grateful for their efforts. It's really, really a powerful solution to a problem that the industry needs help with. So we talked this morning, as Ryan said, about AI risk management and thinking about the AI risk space. And we want to really dig deep in this area of the security certification we've built. And I'd like to, again, introduce Jeremy and Ida, who was with us this morning as well in the session about the trust report. And, these are the people from the inside the HITRUST circle, along with a couple of other colleagues, that have really leaned in on this. And a little bit of background just from where I sit in the strategy role for the company is that this begins with hard work like our standards team, Andrew and others, harmonizing sources, and Jeremy deciding that the quality of those harmonizations is correct and that collaboration that happens. But then there is an enormous body of work that happens that's led by Ida and other colleagues in our team that have to determine how we translate those requirements in a way that we can provide quality and make sure that reliability and relevance that we want to deliver when we offer certification is real. And we wrestle with really tough questions around how the evidence is going to look. What do we want to do with regard to assessor guidance? And in this case, we had a great community of partners from the Assessor Leadership Council that have been leaning in on this with us. So it's not simply a matter of looking at the sources, in this case a lot of sources, and deciding these are the requirements we want to achieve and we want to measure. We have to actually do the work of trying to make sure it's a product that each of you can consume at whatever point in your journey you're at. And that's why things like inheritance and shared responsibility become so important, as was shared earlier as well in this session. So we're going to cover this agenda. Very simple. We'll tell you what the certification is and a little bit more about why we think it matters. And then Ida will talk about the assessment and kind of how we think about the assessment process around this. And then Jeremy will take us home talking about the requirements, and we're going to break down an example requirement. So really robust agenda for an hour, but there's a lot to cover here. And I'm fully committed to the fact that we aren't just going to show this to you today and walk through it and then have you start working with the product. We're looking at plans to have things like office hours and other times where those of you that are looking at assessment in this space or the assessors can come to us and say, okay, we're hearing these common questions, the evidence doesn't seem to be this or that or the other, and we know it's a novel space, we know it's new, and we're going to do it with quality and distinction because we have to make all of you successful that are starting with us on this journey. So with that, I want to give you a moment to take a picture of this QR code, so I'm going to leave this slide up for a few minutes. We have done this in the past. We've done this rarely because so much of the time we're in a process of updating the market with regard to how we're evolving the CSF or how we're looking at the space in terms of new requirements. But in this case, we decided we would do two things that have been incredibly valuable. And I'd like to say they were just great ideas, but I think they're just the only way you can do this kind of work. We wanted to work in the open. What we mean by that is we wanted to hear from people in the industry that are actually living in the cloud space, running clouds for major companies or consulting with major companies to deliver clouds with AI and deliver AI on clouds, those types of things. So we had a working group. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But the second thing we did is everything that we have learned, we have developed, we have harmonized, we have considered, maybe less the debates, although some of the debates are in this document as well. It's all in a public draft specification that is open for public comment. And it's available on a HITRUST site. The URL is the QR code you see here. It is still open for comment. And if you believe this is in your future, and I hope every one of you do that are deploying AI systems, I would invite you to go look at it today. It is not a rough draft. It is a very polished draft, thanks to the leadership of these people and the feedback we've gotten so far. And I think arguably, this is maybe somewhat debatable, it's probably the most highly commented body of work we've put out in the history of the company, I think, or close to it. I think we had a lot of comments, I think, when we first released the CSF back in the early life of the company. But we're hearing from people that are new to a relationship with HITRUST. They're saying, we're in the AI space, we're AI practitioners and leaders, and we're getting terrific feedback. And the feedback has been, I think, fair to say, overwhelmingly positive. And where it's been constructive and slightly critical, they are things that we're saying, you know what, that could be better. And so this product is being updated daily or almost daily as comments are coming in. So you're not looking at the version we published, you're looking at the version that has learned from the human, not the AI. It's learned from the humans that are looking at this and making it right. So you'll see, I hope you'll find it as clear as I have found it, and I really do hope that you'll lean in on it with us and give us your comments and become part of the community that's going to make this great for the organizations that we serve. So thank you to those of you that have looked at it. I know a number of you have, and thanks as well to the few of you in the audience that have helped us put this together, and we're really grateful for that.
Right, and I'll add on the feedback. We've established several ways to give feedback in the website, Manuala, I think it's pronounced. There's a little comment area below each page. So if you have a question on, hey, it's talking about interim assessments, what will interim assessments look like on this new certification? Or, hey, there's a requirement that's really specific to adversarial machine learning. Will that apply to large language models? Questions and comments can be put down in the little comment tool. And if you feel like, oh, I've got so many, I've got a spreadsheet, maybe a conversation's better. Like, let's have those conversations if you feel like this is something in your future. We've had several sort of one-on-one conversations, and it's shaped the draft certification specification and will ultimately shape the assessments and certifications that we receive. And so we're very thankful for any and all feedback, big or small. It's been sort of a great opportunity to just connect with people we otherwise wouldn't have connected with. To Robert's point, we're engaging with organizations that we've never had a relationship with because they're passionate about AI security, and they've been doing it a while, and they see this as an opportunity to assess their own capabilities against this framework, or assess their control frameworks against this framework. So it's really been enlightening to have these conversations. And if you feel like, I'm not sure if I'm the right person, it's too small, but you will be, or like your feedback is too small, but you will be going through this, don't exclude yourself on that basis. We'd like to hear from you very much.
Yeah, because we know that like many things in the world of digital, the small players are going to be the great players someday. So if you're using something and you've got this incredibly unique use case, I've seen some really fascinating stuff in healthcare alone, because that's the space I come from. Maybe you're a startup, you're at the edge of something that you think is exciting and you just don't quite see how it fits. Ask us about it. We'll probably learn from you, and we will learn from you, but we're happy to provide our thoughts as well on why we've done it the way we've done it. So that's just good, being good neighbors in this process together. So kind of turning to the risk and the problems we're trying to solve. So there's a debate that some people have said that, well, AI is just another application on a digital platform, so it's kind of the same stuff a different day. And I think many CISOs, including myself, frankly, when I first heard about this AI thing with generative AI, I was like, yeah, it's another platform. I'm going to have to make sure we secure it. But we have policies, we have procedures, we know how to do that. And so there might be a little bit of an ostrich effect where some people still have their heads a little bit buried in the sand, either consciously because they just don't know how to absorb it, or perhaps because they just aren't students of it. I will tell you, I don't use it. I'm the dinosaur on stage, but this man, Jeremy, composes great music with AI, and he shows me stuff all the time. I'm like, that's just really cool. So I know people that do great art with it and stuff. So I think those don't sound like really cool use cases, but they are. They're actually part of the system, and they're really, really intriguing problems and really intriguing solutions to solve. So whether you're by design sort of not sure, whether you're you haven't really looked at it yet, or maybe you're all over it and you've got to do something and you're looking for something to help you do the something. It's out there and it does have risk. I mentioned this morning in our earlier session, I'll say it again, unlike things like cloud, where we were reluctant and we had lots of comfortable partnerships around our reluctance, this is moving at the speed of business, I guess would be a way to say it, and excitement from your business partners and the executives of your companies is driving AI so quickly. And so, having you guys do the right kind of diligence and the right kind of thoughtful reflection on this is not necessarily the first thought of people that are trying to respond to the gold rush of getting their territory staked out with their use of AI. So it does have excitement. And if you get it wrong from a cybersecurity as well as other elements of trustworthy and responsible AI, there can be critical outcomes. So including the fact that all of that super secret, exciting use case idea that your business wants to be first to market with is stolen and it becomes public domain, and everything you're trying to do that you believe is unique to your business is no longer unique because everybody knows what you're trying to do. So there are considerations there, and those are hooks that you may use with your business leaders to say, listen, the cybersecurity of this is important because everything you care about that we believe to be unique is not information we want the market to know about until we're ready to have the product online. So that sometimes will get the attention of an executive. The threats for AI today, there are words that I didn't know existed, like confabulation, my favorite word these days, that are part of the risk and the threat landscape that emerges from AI systems. And so there are new things, but there are also things that become even more critical, and you need these additional cybersecurity measures to stay on top of that. And like all things HITRUST, we believe that good security is prescriptive security, appropriately prescriptive. I'm not going to tell you how to configure every part of the environment, but we have a really good idea and a very comprehensive view now of the threats and risk that different types of AI use cases expose and what controls are relevant to meet and manage those risks to cybersecurity. And I think you'll hopefully agree at the end of this session and after you look at it that it's achievable and they are important things to work on when you understand how the things work. So we're really looking to get you secured, make sure you have validation of that security. If you stand for certification, terrific. We want your underlying platforms to be secured using E1, I1, and R2 logic, and we want to have the ability for you to have reports that you can share with people that care, that say you are the leaders you are and you've actually started on the problem the right way. So that's what we're trying to do with this. So from a certification perspective, it will be out right before the holiday season, or I guess in between the holidays and in the U.S. calendar, Thanksgiving and the end of year holidays. It is a certification for AI providers, and we're going to get into specifically how we view that world of providers a bit. It is optional on top of a CSF validated assessment, but if you want a AI security certification for an AI provider, you do have to have the underlying HITRUST certification for the serving infrastructure. It looks at the security, specifically the security of the system, and it gets into very specific practices for different types of AI. We use the tailoring logic you're all very, very comfortable with the R2, and now available in the E1 and the I1 through our additional control capabilities now to allow you to tailor the requirements based on the type of AI system you're doing or systems you're doing. And that makes the problem the right size for the right problem, and the solution will be right sized to fit that right problem. So that's really how the certification will go, and in a minute you're going to get into all those details that explain how. So
I do have one extra bit on that last slide. We learned very early on it wasn't specific enough to say this will be an AI security thing, because AI security as a term we learned is not precise enough.
Oh, great point.
Because you can have security with AI, like helping your SOC team detect anomalous activities and whether you should alert those and all that stuff. Security with AI, it's not this. And then the adversaries using AI to be better at being bad guys, obviously not this. So this is security for the AI system, security of the AI system. So what protections are necessary to ensure that that AI-enabled system, that platform, and the model in there are appropriately protected from security threats. So unfortunately, it's great that there's so much application of AI in the security world, but we're really specific, because we learned, unfortunately, it's not easy enough to say, this is just an AI security thing. Well, this is security for and of the AI system itself.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Jeremy. So I think that my previous words kind of note this up, but I'll end my part with this and say, it is for your organizations that are using those AI solutions. And in the context of you're using those solutions as a system provider, you may be getting elements of those solutions from a provider of an AI platform or a data model, such as an AI service provider, often the cloud providers. So you can kind of see how that perspective plays a part here. First of all, complexity. It's complex and hard stuff. Just understanding what it is and how you secure it. Certainly probably job one here. But understanding which piece you're doing as the deployer and which piece maybe the model provider, if you're using a commercial model that you're buying or licensing from somebody like an OpenAI, that's an important part of this. And then you get to the downstream benefits from having done this. You have confidence that the solutions in use are secure. For the solution providers, maybe it's an accelerator. Their customers are more comfortable that they have the right capabilities. And I think that's, not to speak for our partners in the working group, but I think that's the motivation for several of our working group members, is they know it's hard, and they know it's hard to explain. So I won't put words in their mouths, but I think they want to be able to see their hard work have a place that it can be understood by the market and that it can be consumed by the market. So that's great. We want to make sure the market understands that it's good, so we can have that proactive communication or proactive assessment of the risk, depending on which side of the aisle you're on. And there's a third-party dimension. And so the ecosystem that you all work in today is the ecosystem of technology providers for the systems you deliver, or the business platform providers for the business services, such as claim processing and clearinghouses in healthcare is a good example. AI has an ecosystem too. You have technologies and models that are part of that, and they are your third-party risk with AI if you're a deployer. So I think it's got a lot of benefit. I think it has a lot of potential, and I can't wait, and I'm very excited to have the feedback from you all about what we're building, and also see early success with a number of you that have talked to me and said this is something we really want to do. So we're looking forward to that. With that, Jeremy, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks, Robert. Yeah. So we mentioned this is for AI providers. Luckily, we're not trying to create new concepts or terms. We're using terms aligned with ISO standards and other documents that are well known and respected and already established. And in this case, we're using the ISO 22989 definition of AI providers. That particular ISO document outlines general concepts of AI and AI systems. Really good glossary and sort of personas in there. And here we're using that. So really, an AI provider is an organization who provides products or services that use one or more AI systems. So in our world, it'll be the AI platform providers. It'll also be the organizations that build systems on those platforms. And lastly, organizations who are doing everything in-house, that are building a system, maybe hosting a system that's using an AI model. Notably excluded from this is sort of the AI usage layer. And we did that really intentionally because whether you are an AI provider or not, your organization should be considering controls around AI usage. And so we'll be baking those usage layer controls, like having an acceptable AI usage policy in your organization, into the next major version of the CSF that we'll talk about. Next year it'll come out, and it'll have stuff like that. So this is really the provider stuff for the SaaS application providers, for the cloud providers, for organizations that build those systems that are using AI-enabled models. So what types of AI can be certified? So we had a fair amount of discussion in our working group, and I'll talk about some of the working groups we've had focused on AI this year, around should we focus just on generative AI, because that's where a lot of the investment and certainly all of the media attention and research is happening. Should it just be a Gen AI solution? And we quickly landed on the answer of no, it shouldn't. While Gen AI is new to a lot of us, AI is a discipline and field of study, and certainly AI and the use of businesses is not new. As a matter of fact, there's organizations who've employed people that do nothing but AI for decades now. And so we know that there are many other types of AI systems apart from Gen AI that are in production right now. And they have AI novel security risks and also security risks exacerbated by AI that should be considered, right? So we landed on 3 different high-level categories of AI, or really types of AI models that can be considered in this. And it's really broad on purpose. Obviously, the Gen AI, that we know what that does, it's creating new content, pictures of cats, a lot more important stuff than pictures of cats, but it's generating stuff, right? We also have a really broad umbrella of predictive AI, and this is the same umbrella that NIST 100-2 uses, as well as OWASP AI Exchange, sort of bucketing machine learning into generative machine learning and sort of non-generative machine learning, this predictive AI that's still using machine learning models, but it's not using a foundation model, it's not a large language model, it's doing more of those predictions and trying to get very accurate outputs. And we had a fair amount of debate on whether we should include sort of the legacy or historical expert systems, otherwise known as heuristic AI or rules-based AI. It's probably the most rolled out form of AI in any sort of AI system, but it doesn't get the area of research funding and research attention. And if you're building an AI system today, you're less likely to just start with a rule-based model. But you may, as a compound AI system, have a rule-based model combined with a Gen AI model or some other machine learning models. So we've got these 3 sort of high-level types of AI models that we'll support. And I'm really happy to say it also considers some of the more modern design practices and development practices associated with Gen AI, like the use of embeddings, the use of RAG, and agentic AI, like the use of agents and plugins, as well as, we can't ignore a lot of these AI systems are being built on platforms. So certainly there's AI platform as a service support, as well as sort of AI infrastructure as a service. And we'll talk a lot about these different, specifically IaaS, PaaS, SaaS AI applications tomorrow in the shared AI responsibilities session. So if you're looking at this saying, man, this is pretty broad, that was the goal, because we feel like if an organization has an area of inherent risk that is AI, we shouldn't filter our solution just to the newest, sexiest type of AI, which is Gen AI. So what is it not? I mentioned we're not setting out to have sort of the AI usage layer controls exhaustively addressed, because we know that those AI usage layer risks are important for everybody, not just organizations that are being AI providers. And we're focusing very narrowly and specifically on AI security risks, but we also know that AI security is a subset of that larger, trustworthy, and responsible AI area, which we know has a lot more than security that must be considered. And contrast this point to the point I made earlier today around the AI risk management, assessment, and insight report, and the basis for that, which is NIST AI RMF and the ISO standard, that really acknowledges there's a lot of areas of risk and a lot of considerations apart from security in the AI world that we have to consider, we can't ignore, like privacy and human safety and transparency, explainability, contestability, sustainability, on and on and on. So this is not meant to be an exhaustive solution for all of those. And this is also not meant to try to exhaustively address every single law that might apply to your AI system in every jurisdiction. But we feel like this is still very important because organizations are rolling out AI right now and have been for a while, and are getting more and more questionnaires from their key stakeholders around, what are you doing on AI security? And now that we're getting smarter about it, we're having smarter questions to you. And that deluge of questionnaires around AI security is only going to grow, and the need for AI security assurances is already here. And further to the point about benefits, if I've got a really cool AI prototype and I need to get it into production to start adding value, and one of the things that's stopping me is questions around, how can we secure this? I need assurance that it's secured before it can process sensitive data. We really feel like this is valuable apart from the limitations, and this is true for every assurance mechanism. It's not meant to solve each and every single problem across the gamut of all enterprise risk, right? But I thought it was important to highlight what it's not, because trustworthy and responsible AI is so much bigger. I'll also add that ISO 42001, as we know, is very popular right now because it's new and organizations are starting to get certified on it. This is meant to complement, but not replace ISO 42001. It's a complement, but not replace. I think it would be folly to try to create a tool that tries to replace ISO 42001 because it's an international standard for good reason. It's well thought out. There's a lot of good thinking behind it. But I'll talk a little bit about this because it's been an area of questions, and I really want the group to understand kind of how we view the placement of this AI security certification alongside 42001. So those that have gone through it, there's actually a few AI ISO 42001 certified organizations in the room. So if I get this a little bit wrong, please forgive me. I'm trying to make generalizations, but I'd love to hear your perspective going through that certification process. Anyway, the stated purpose, it's an AI management system. It's not an AI security management system. It's broader. It's a broad AI management system. Its purpose is to provide guidance for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving an AI management system within the organization. It focuses on a lot of broad stuff, much broader than AI security. And these are quotes. It has guidance like, determine whether climate change is a relevant issue. It's not the kind of stuff you would see in a cybersecurity-focused certification, because it's not trying to be. ISO 27090, I think, is the upcoming ISO AI security certification. It's standard. It's still in closed draft, so we can't see it. But this is to be expected climate change focus when you think about the larger umbrella of trustworthy and responsible AI. It also encourages you to understand the competitive landscape and trends for new products or services that you're trying to compete with against AI. It acknowledges cybersecurity is an area of risk. It does have AI SDLC considerations, but it doesn't go deep into AI security. Instead, it says the organization can combine this management system with generally accepted frameworks and other standards to really implement those crucial processes. I read that as it's meant to be compatible with deeper dives in areas just like this, so which is why we are confident in saying this complements but doesn't replace ISO 42001. If you've already got ISO 42001 in your sights, I congratulate you. I think it's a great decision because I think managing sort of this whole AI trustworthy, responsible problem after you've identified the risks, you need a management system to do that. It's just too hard. It's just too big to not. So I'll turn it over to Ida, and we'll talk about this.
If I may, Ida and Jeremy, just so you said something I wanted to key on, but I wanted to let you get through 42001 because it's so vital. Is that, and it's this notion of the questions you're all being asked if you're an AI provider today. And I've talked to a number of people that are former peers of mine about this challenge. Some of our working group members as well. And we all talk a lot about the value of questionnaires. I think the value of questionnaires in the AI space is incredibly challenging right now because the question askers don't quite understand yet what the risks are. And so you get these questions like, tell us all the data used to train the AI system. Where did all the data come from to train the system? Or tell us our data will never be used to train a system. Well, their data is probably in some respects the public domain and may have trained. So while those are invitations to have conversations, and we invite conversations and transparency, it's a real challenge. So having this level of transparency around a set of requirements that we can all understand why they exist, I think it's going to help make those question askers a little more understanding of the problem, and perhaps they'll find ways not to have to ask the questions and ask for things like this instead. So, Ida, to you, please.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Jeremy. I just wanted to start by reminding us that anybody that has had a HITRUST certification or you're going through one, you know the most important deliverable is the HITRUST assessment. So my segment is a brief overview of what the assessment will look like. And remember, we have the draft exposure. If you hear anything here and you have any feedback, please feel free to provide that so we can update that before we launch. So to start on the assessment side, Jeremy had a very good session yesterday on the fundamentals of AI technology. And one of the things he did present, and I had it repeated today, that when you think of AI systems, they are add-on systems. They don't stand alone. When you think of securing those AI systems, you also have to think of the underlying platform and infrastructure that is supporting that AI. So we want to start by emphasizing as well, with the AI security certification, the assessment will not be standalone. It will be available for you within an E1, an I1, and an R2 assessments, because we also need to cover the security of the underlying platform. So it's important to remember that. The second thing I wanted to mention here, it's not on this slide, but it's not available in the current CSF versions. It will be available in the upcoming CSF version 11.4 and later. So for anybody that is looking to have the AI certification once we launch, your I1, your E1, and your R2 must be created within the CSF version 11.4. So with that in mind, we will consider the assessment as an add-on to your main assessment. Another question I know we are answering in the draft exposure, will this be compulsory for every E1, I1, or an L2 assessment that is created within the CSF version 11.4? Robert mentioned earlier, this will be optional. So even if you do have AI models within your environment, you'll have to select the factor, and we'll talk about scoping, and then we'll talk about how you can tailor that assessment. So let's talk a little bit about scoping. Similar to the current assessments, you need to know some of the driving factors or items that must be true for the systems to be in scope. So specific to the AI assessments, the following items must be true for you to be able to qualify to select the AI security factor. One, you must have a system or a platform that has the AI model in it. Currently, within my CSF, the section for scope of the assessment, you don't have yet a section where you can add these details. With the launch of this certificate and the assessment will update the details you must input within my CSF. So we'll add a section that will also include the AI models that you're leveraging in the system that you've put in scope.
Or specifically indicate that the IT platform uses an AI model.
Correct, correct. No, that's a great point, Jeremy. So please watch for that. And for those that have already gone through QA with us, you know we do follow up on the scope details. So if those scope details are very clear, less questions you'll have from the internal HITRUST team. The second item, you must select the compliance. It will be a compliance factor. Previously, I think we referred to that section as regulatory factors, but you will have the option to select that. You must select that to pull in the requirement statements for AI security specific. And then you must include the IT platform and infrastructure that those AI models are hosted within. And that's what your E1, your I1, and the R2 assessment will be based on. But remember, you can have more than one scope environment within one assessment object. So if you do have an environment that doesn't have AI and have another environment that has AI, just ensure the platform that hosts AI is listed in your scope. And finally, similar to your current assessments, HITRUST only certifies systems the company owns. So the company must own those systems. They can't be for your service provider. So once you've determined per the scoping that you can include your platform and AI models, let's talk about how you'll tailor your assessment. And within the section for tailoring the assessment, it's important to understand these questions. Please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any concerns during your planning, because this determines how many requirement systems that will be added. So when you do select the AI security factor, the system will automatically pull in the AI requirement statement, but it also provides you 3 questions to tailor that so that you know how many requirements will be added. I know we mentioned earlier it's a maximum of 44, but you can have less depending with how you tailor that, your assessment profile, excuse me. So similar to some of the other factor questions you've seen before, these are the 3 questions that will be specific to the AI assessment. The first one is trying to identify the AI models that are within that platform. Please note the first question, you can have more than one choice. You can have either the rule-based AI model, and Jeremy did a very good job earlier talking through what these options are and what these models are. The rule-based AI model is to do with expert systems, so if those are the ones being used on your platform, you'll select that. Please note it will add 28 requirement statements into your assessment. These are the base requirement statements. Then if you do have the predictive AI model, which is the non-generative AI model, a lot of corporations do use this, but I don't think they think of them as AI systems where you're using historic data that is analyzed to predict the future. So just know, in case your system is running that type of AI model, you can select that, and it adds 35 requirement statements. But let me explain what the 35 requirement statement will comprise of. The 28 base requirement statements and an additional 7. Of those 7, 2 will be very specific to predictive AI model. And then with the generative AI model, which is the most common one, the exciting one right now, it will add 37 requirement statements. Again, it will be 28 base requirement statements and 9 additional requirement statements. 4 of those will be very specific to the generative AI model. I want to take a minute here and just mention, for the sake of those that haven't done a HITRUST assessment, we do have similar tailoring factor questions. And for those that have gone through our QA process, you know a lot of questions come from that, because some of them add on requirement statements, and others just remove requirement statement depending with your responses. So if you notice, if you select the wrong model, for example, you have predictive AI model, and we identify that within your scope, there are 2 specific requirement statements that are very specific to that model that would be added in addition to the others. So it's important to make sure you're selecting the right model so that you don't miss the right controls within the profile of your assessment.
And on that point, in addition to the question, there'll be, like all of our other factor descriptions and questions, a little tooltip that'll give extra guidance and link to our help site with extra guidance. So we're trying to make it, colorful so that you don't choose that wrong question.
I agree. And we'll still open it up. If you're not sure, reach out. You can reach out through support, and some of you already have our contacts. You can email us, and we'll be available to clarify this. I encourage you reach out during planning, right before fieldwork, so you have the right assessment profile.
Yeah, and if it's a compound AI system, or there's some kind of ensembling, there's different kinds of models, you would sort of take a high watermark. So if it's Gen AI plus predictive AI, Gen AI is what you'd select with predictive AI. The system will treat it as a high watermark, and you'll get those 37 instead of and the 35, which is kind of cumulative to your point. Yeah.
And it's a maximum of 44. Let's look at the next 2 questions and see what we are looking for there and how many requirement statements they may add. The first question gives you several options. The next 2 questions is a yes or no answer. The second question is looking to determine if you used covered or confidential data within the AI models. And usually we all if you understand the technology around AI models, they are trained and tuned or enhanced with a lot of data. And specific to an organization, that data may most likely be confidential or covered information. And if you want the definition of covered or confidential information, please always reference the HITRUST glossary, because that's the common reference that we use. We know covered information is related to that data that has regulatory impact with it, and confidential data is that data that cannot be shared to unauthorized users. But keep that in mind. It's important to identify if confidential or covered information was used. If that is a yes, and your response there is a yes, it's important to have additional protection around this data, so you don't have data leakage or data theft or unauthorized access because you've used that data within an AI model. So it will add 4 more requirement statements to your assessment profile that are very specific to protecting the data. And then the last question is around whether the model parameters or the architecture is private or open source. And this is important because even if the model was set up from an open source initially, there is a lot of work that goes into tuning that model, building the architecture of that model that may have the organization's intellectual property. So you don't want to expose the AI models. The risk here is exposing it to parameter linkage or theft of the model. So it's important as you scope your assessment to determine is that private or just open source? If it's private, then that adds 4 more requirements, statements specific to addressing the threat of theft, I believe, or leakage of the AI model parameters. And that allows you to tailor your assessment. As you can see with those 3 questions, you can either have a maximum of 37 if you just have a Gen AI model and no covered information and it's open source, or you can have additional. That's about an additional 4 more requirement statements if any of the other questions are answered as yes. But please know, even if you see the summation of these additional requirement statements, like it might be more than 44, it will only be a maximum of 44 requirements.
That's right. And sort of the caveat to these numbers is the draft specification is in draft and includes these requirements. So if we get great feedback that says, HITRUST, this extra requirement, good intent, not cybersecurity, it could change, or there's a key cybersecurity requirement that you really should consider adding. These can go up or down a little bit, but I don't anticipate major shift. So directionally, these are correct. It may be 44 at the end. I hope it's not 44 because we already have a 44. Do you know what the 44 is? The E1. Yeah, so we got the E1 44, and now we got the AI security 44, and it's too many 44s. And 42 is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. So maybe we'll get there.
I keep expecting that you're going to get us a 42
requirement. I tried to get to 42 on the I1,
tried on the
or the E1.
I know.
And I tried to get to 42 to this.
I wouldn't let you do it. Nope.
No, truth must win.
Those 2 extra things were important. So.
The best part, if you're wondering what these requirement statements are, Jeremy, after my last slide, Jeremy will cover requirement statements, but we also have them listed in the exposure draft. If you already got that QR code, you have access to review that. So my last slide is on expectations. Please note, with the exposure draft right now, you can provide your feedback. I'm echoing what you've already had, but it's very important you provide your feedback. It's open through October 17th. But once we finalize that, like every other launch that we have, we do publish the assurance program advisory. We will have a very detailed advisory, and it will provide the final logistics around the HITRUST QA process for the AI certification, any specific additional logistics for the interim and bridge assessment specific to the AI certification. Also, we'll have a sample of how the final reports and letters will look like, and also details around the caps and gaps. But most important, also the scoring threshold. I know some of the assessors are already thinking about that. Please review the exposure draft and provide your feedback if you have any questions. But overall, we'll also update the assessment handbook and the HITRUST glossary with the details. One thing we wanted to emphasize with this slide, we always provide a detailed advisory, which is a good reference for you. But this time we want to ask you to review with the thought process of understanding it and learning something new. The AI area is still very new. We know there is a lot to explore. So we are just asking you, don't review it and say you'll come back to it for future feedback. We ask of you to review it, to learn something new, so you keep the dialogue going on. So especially for the assessors, if you do have any questions when you see our final logistics around the AI certification and assessment, please reach out. That's one thing we wanted to communicate as we presented this. Let's use that also as a learning tool once we publish that. I know you may have something more to add as you go to the next section.
Not at all. Thank you. Thanks for walking us through that, Ida. Yeah, the mechanism of achieving assurance is very detail-oriented, and we scratch the surface, and it has to be because we expect really granular outcomes, and we have to know whether certification can be achieved. So we covered detail, but there's going to be a lot more detail in the advisory. So thanks for walking us through that level of detail, Ida. The requirements themselves maybe took longer than they should because this AI security space, like we've said before, it's new, but it's also talked about very heavily. I read somewhere that there was over 400 AI working groups this year in the US alone. If you go to AIstandardshub.org, which is maintained by the Alan Turing Institute in the UK, there's hundreds of AI standards, not all about security, but it's reflective of just how much thought is going into this area. And there's a lot of focus on AI security. A lot this year, a lot last year, a lot the year before, and a lot the year before, and so on. We had several different inputs to sort of shaping the requirements. We had inputs from our AI working groups, which we'll talk about. We also analyzed the HITRUST CSF as a security control framework. We think it's pretty good. It's got buckets to consider X and Y and Z. And we went through the fine-tooth comb and said, does this control reference have an AI specificity? Does this one? Does this one? Does this one? And on and on and on. We also did a lot of work to try to understand the AI security threat landscape. Dr. Klein's in the room. He helped very, very much on this. And we used the we used the HITRUST threat catalog as an input to this, as well as really good AI threat taxonomies like NIST AI 100-2 and MITRE Atlas and others. We also did what we do and harmonized sources. I'll talk about the AI sources that we worked on harmonizing to sort of build a consensus view of what the rest of the world considers critical from an AI security perspective. And we had the pleasure of interviewing what I consider thought leaders in the AI security space. I don't think I have a slide on that, so we're briefly, we interviewed the gentleman who's behind the OWASP AI Exchange, Rob Vanderveer. It's on our podcast. It's one of our most downloaded episodes. We talk about stuff like the EU AI Act. We talk about ISO 42001, and we talk about who should own all this stuff within an organization. Should it be one person? Should it be many? Should you have an ethics committee? And questions like that are top of mind. Another example, we also interviewed the gentleman who is behind the Microsoft AI Share Responsibility Matrix. That episode's, I think, coming out next week. So a few examples of the conversations with people who have really approached this problem from a critical angle. So we're very lucky to have those conversations. And specific to the AI working groups, there's probably several people in this room that contributed. We are deeply grateful for all the time that was volunteered to support these initiatives, this as well as the AI risk management insight work that we talked about earlier. We had 2 working groups listed here. There's a 3rd working group we had internally with leadership from assurance and quality and innovation and standards and others in our organization. But our externally inclusive working groups, an AI adopter and cloud service provider working group included the logos you see here, including AWS, Microsoft, Databricks, Clouticity, Johnson & Johnson, and Optum UHG. And we met for a long time. We met very frequently for a long time and had a lot of these discussions that shaped what we're talking about today. There was also an external assessor, AI working group. We met several times. It included several professional services firms. And we focused on what qualifications are necessary in the assessment team to perform what we're talking about at the quality and level of care that is expected to achieve a HITRUST certification and really do a meaningful assessment of AI security within an organization.
Jeremy, it's important to add that that is outlined within the exposure draft right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the written deliverable on sort of AI assessor qualifications to do this work, you're right, it's in the draft specification. So if you're an external assessor firm and you want to see kind of what the recommendations were there, they're reflected there as well for comment as well. And so again, HITRUST is deeply grateful. I thought it was a very rewarding experience. We deepened our professional network connections, and I think we all learned a fair amount about this problem space, and I hope to continue to do this. I'm about to show a few slides to talk about authoritative sources that we considered, with a caveat. You'll see some authoritative sources that were not mapped into the HITRUST CSF intentionally, and when I show these, know that we use these as inputs to shape our understanding of the AI security threat landscape and to shape our understanding of where everyone else is at when identifying the critical AI security controls. It does not mean that we included 100% of these sources. Instead, we read through all of them many, many times, compared them against each other, discussed them in the forums that I mentioned previously. But by putting them up here, don't take away that we incorporated every one of them into the CSF. We didn't use them that way, but they were still very critical inputs. So we considered several from ISO 24028, 22989, which I mentioned earlier, the AI governance standard, 38507, which is a sleeper, in my opinion. It's really good. I don't hear many people talking about it. And obviously 42001, ENISA in the EU is really far ahead. These documents listed here were seminal in the space. They're old, from 2019. If that can be considered old in this space, I think it can. But they're heavily referenced, and they're looked to as a source of truth where there wasn't before. And OWASP, a volunteer organization, very, very good work in my opinion. And the 4 you see listed in OWASP, 3 of the 4 we've mapped into the HITRUST CSF, including ML Top 10, which is coming out in 11.4.0, Top 10 for LLM, which is already harmonized, and the AI Exchange, which is also already harmonized as well. Specific to the OWASP AI Exchange, in my opinion, it's the most straightforward, plain English explanation of this problem space. It's a good read. It's like not unapproachable. Some of these, like NIST AI 100-2, very, very, very academic in its tone, and it's sort of hard to approach. That's completely the opposite for AI Exchange. But these were all important. NIST AI 600.1 is very, very new. It's an overlay of the AI RMF. And 100-2 is a taxonomy of threats. And there are more. Yes, there are more. We were very thorough. I won't list all of these, but obviously MITRE, CSA, Cloud Security Alliance has their threat taxonomy. So we incorporated all of these documents into our thinking and to educate ourselves and to really understand the problem space. And we also use not only authoritative sources, but commercial sources, because it's not only the standard-setting bodies and the not-for-profit think tanks who are tackling this problem. We also considered several documents from commercial entities, some of which we're very familiar with and have tight relationships with, some of which we don't, but we thought the content was so meaningful we couldn't ignore it. So these were very important to our understanding as well. The AI security threats considered, and so it would be folly, again, to start with a list of controls and not say why. So these requirements exist and are important because they help mitigate or prevent or correct cybersecurity threats. And so this is not a comprehensive list of AI cybersecurity threats. This is not all adversarial in nature. Some of them are, but they're not all nefarious. It worked out this way that these were highlighted and mapped to the AI security controls in the framework, some of which we know. We're very familiar with denial of service in this industry for a long time, and it is not absent from the AI security space. Some of which may be new terms we haven't heard before, haven't had to use before, like confabulation or excessive agency, some of which you might be saying, are you sure that that's cybersecurity, like copyright infringing output? I will say that the most lively discussions we had across all of our working groups was what's in and what's out. If we want to draw this circle around AI cybersecurity, what's in? Like, is performance of the AI model in? Is avoidance of detrimental bias in? Is toxicity in? And I feel like we got really, really close to the right answer, but are we squinting too hard at some of these to put them in security? I hope not. And that's where I'm hoping feedback from this group can help shape our understanding and sort of solidify those borders, because we're not so proud as to say we're 100% sure we got it right. And so there's opportunity to give feedback. If you see any of these and you're really challenging it, or if you see one that's not here and you're wondering why it's not here. The 44 requirements, if you think about our traditional way of looking at what's in a HITRUST assessment, I look at the assessment domains. Are all assessment domains represented? No, they're not, and that's expected, because not all domains have requirements that talk about AI specificities, and not all domains have control references that really talk about AI specificities. So you won't see stuff like endpoint protection or wireless security, but you'll see a fair amount on vulnerability management. Surprise, surprise. This is very focused on AI security threats. There are a few in privacy. That privacy domain 19 is data protection and privacy. Those 4 are data protection, not privacy. This is still a security assessment. Also, for grouping and for exploring this thing and kind of categorizing, we use sort of a temporary bucketing called AI security topic or AI topic. These won't be ported into the final product, but it's a helpful overlay to see sort of what's in here and what's out. Of note, there are pure security requirements that are technical in nature, but there are also some security governance requirements in here that are meant as variance reduction to help ensure the continued operation of those security requirements that are technical in nature. So we do have some AI governance stuff, leaning more toward AI security governance, but clearly AI governance stuff, like expanding the organization's existing policies to discuss the AI specificities where necessary, or like assigning ownership for a lot of what these requirements are calling for through a RACI or some other mechanism to make sure that someone knows that they're actually responsible for performing them. But in total, 44. And I guess that last one, resilience of the AI system, it looks pretty empty with only 2, but really resilience is overlaid throughout. Which requirements are in? Well, these are a few of these are the buckets. There'd be no way to list all 44 requirements. We'd spend another 2 hours on it, but I did put each bucket with an example and how many requirements are in here. So model robustness, for example, in the center is a requirement that talks about data minimization or I'm not going to say that word correctly, data minimization or anonymizing that data. Access to the AI system right below it. As for an example, there's a requirement focusing on restricting access to the AI models where they sit, like for example, on the file system to help avoid model theft. So there's just a few, and we really don't have the time to dive in, but luckily you have access to all of these. And in the draft specification, I'll show you what some of these requirements look like by just walking through one random example, output filtering. And so let's spend a little bit of time on that. The content that I'm showing here is also on that page in the draft security specifications. So we have the language of the requirement statement itself. Gen AI outputs are potentially toxic, protected, or sensitive or filtered out before reaching the end user of the AI system. We note that there are 3 evaluative elements in there. It won't mean something to everybody in this room, but if you know what an evaluative element is, they're called out very clearly. We'll show where it's going to go in the HITRUST CSF and the existing buckets. We talk about which parts of the overall AI system this requirement might be configured in. And we also map it back to the relevant AI security threat, which I mentioned earlier, and also talk about tailoring. So is this requirement going to be in every assessment? No, this will only be in requirements featuring an in-scope Gen AI model. And also we'll talk about whether it is inheritable, this one partially, and that's a screenshot of sort of the mapped AI security threat, which also have information pages in the spec. Also, I think the spec sort of excels at the crosswalks to all those approximately 24 authoritative sources and commercial sources. And so here we have this requirement is discussed in OWASP AI Exchange. There'll be a hyperlink. It's discussed in the LLM AI security and governance checklist from OWASP with the breadcrumb trail to find out more. And it's also discussed in guidelines for secure AI system development from CISA, and several commercial sources as well with the exact reference, so you can go read up and see more. So it's pretty exhaustive if you multiply that level of detail across 44 requirements, plus the advisory content, plus all the information about the threats, as well as discussing sort of the problem space and the need. But don't let that deter you, because you can zoom in just on the parts of the draft specification you might be interested in reading or understanding more about.
One thing to add that I think the assessors will appreciate, the 3 questions you're using to tailor the assessment, if you go to the exposure draft, you have all the background information. If you see what Jeremy just presented, you're able to know for this choice of AI model, these are the additional, very specific requirement statements, and we are giving you the opportunity to review that. I don't believe the other assessments you've had that opportunity, so I think you've done a lot of work and great work to give the assessors and the assessed entities that are interested a little more background on these requirement statements.
We all have. Yeah, I appreciate it.